Hero shooters offer up lots of variety when it comes to hero design, and I think the most interesting of them have to be the melee characters. It's an archetype that doesn't really exist in other types of shooters just because of the nature of those games. With Marvel Rivals just coming out, I wanted to talk about melee heroes specifically because it has a lot of them and a lot of different types of them. So before we go through every single character, I want to talk about how melee characters work in shooters and when they become well designed. As we go through this, I'm going to use Reinhardt from Overwatch as an example because I think he's kind of the most agreed upon best melee character in Overwatch. So let's start with, how do melee characters work? Well, the most important thing I think is that melee characters have to have some way to supplement their lack of range. Whether that's through projectiles, through movement abilities, through displacement, anything like that, if a melee character cannot consistently get into melee range, what is even the point? Reinhardt has Pin, which allows him to close the distance, he has Fire Strike, which allows him to do damage at range, and he has Shatter, which allows for a longer range stun. Going with that lack of range, they need to be able to keep characters in their effective range as long as possible to get the kill. Obviously, movement and displacement abilities also work for this pretty well. In terms of Reinhardt, he has armor and shield, which allows him to stay in effective ranges longer without having to back away, and his hammer swings actually bring people closer to him, so it's harder to escape him. And then lastly, sometimes with the nature of these characters, they kinda have to break some of the system mechanics to get them fully functional. For starters, most of them don't have much of an aim component with them, which isn't exactly a system mechanic, but it is something that is agreed upon, supposed to be a skill in shooting games. They also often ignore certain abilities, like in Overwatch, melees ignore shields, and in Marvel Rivals, many characters have options that will make them CC immune. They also have unique mechanics of their own sometimes, and Marvel Rivals definitely is no stranger to this. Reinhardt can obviously swing through shields, but he can also hit multiple people at once, which is something that most of the characters with a gun can't do. Melee characters just need some ways to make up for their lack of range and the weaknesses that come with that. However, when we start talking about well-designed characters, we also need to take into account that they need to be limited in their ability to overcome those weaknesses. If they can completely avoid them, that is not going to be well-designed, and it's going to be very frustrating to have to deal with some of these characters. Often, melee characters would have long cooldowns on those abilities that would help supplement their range, or maybe that ability itself is just weaker. It's something that's an extra. It's not key to their kit, but it's something that helps them out a little bit. For Reinhardt, Fire Strikes are on a decently long cooldown, and they aren't the most high damaging projectile in the game. Pin is pretty hard to steer, so you're limited in your movement ability, and Earth Shatter is a very infrequent option as well. Melee characters may often break the rules, but they definitely shouldn't be breaking the rules too much. We are playing a hero shooter, so at the end of the day, melee characters need to have high skill mechanics and good decision making. Oftentimes, melee characters can get too much added to their kit, and one of those things just kind of goes out the window because they have so many things to supplement it. For Reinhardt, Fire Strike requires good aiming and timing, while having to manage that shield cooldown as well for both himself and his team is a tough skill. And of course, melee characters need ample windows of punishment so that it isn't super frustrating once they get to you. Often melee characters have longer times to kill, so you have longer times to react to them. They also have lots of weaknesses to crowd control abilities just because they have to get so close to you and put themselves in danger. If they get stunned, they might be cooked. And of course, you need the ability to interact with them once they get there. You don't want it to be GG just because they got into that effective range. There needs to be some kind of counterplay. Reinhardt, for example, can only block one side at a time, so it's very easy for him to get surrounded because of his limited mobility. So those are what I think the fundamental of melee characters are. Let's go on and talk about the individual characters in Marvel Rivals and see where they succeed and where they don't. And trust me, they have the extreme ends of the spectrum in this video game. Alright, now before we get started, I do want to clarify what I mean by melee characters, because there are a couple characters in this game that you could somewhat classify as melee characters, but because of like their range or their effective game plan, I don't really count. And those two big ones are going to be Groot, because Groot has a lot longer range than most of the melee characters in this game. You know, I can hit Luna from all the way over here. You know what, even as I'm saying it, that's not really melee at all. It is interesting, he does have a unique melee on the, one 2, 3. But for the most part, Groot can supplement his range with a lot of stuff, like his damage wall and everything. So I would not count him as a melee character. Venom as well. You know, Venom has a decent amount of range. I did not realize it went that far either. He can also headshot, which is a little different than most melee characters as well. Yes, he kind of has the game plan of a melee character because his range is somewhat limited, but overall, I don't think Venom really should count either. Shotgun characters, I'm gonna say like Psylocke. You know, Psylocke is not quite what we're looking for because she has consistently projectile, everything like that, and she has decent damage at range. Same thing with Punisher. Obviously he has this, but as a shotgun character, you know, shotgun characters kind of function differently. They have higher DPS outputs, so they don't need to be in and out. You kind of just always gonna kill characters like that, so we're not gonna be counting that, and there's gonna be no supports that fall under this category as well. So with that being said, let's go start with the first character. I'm going to try and go fast. This has been taking me a long time to get through, and I went through three characters, and I forgot to record. So let's start with Hulk. Now, Hulk has the movement. Obviously, he's got his jump. He's got a projectile with the clap, with like just hard whiffed, and he's got a somewhat displacement tool with his, I missed that too, with his, I don't even know what you call it. The stun, right? Hulk kind of has everything to offset the melee character, and you know, he can keep up with people with this and finish off people with the clap, and he has sustain. You know, he's got his bubble, so he can stay in longer, stay in the effective range without getting forced out with his jump, right? That is kind of, that's Hulk, right? He doesn't really break the system mechanics so much, although his exile ability is a little strange, but, you know, that's how he functions as a melee character in this game. The thing about Hulk, though, is that his weaknesses are not really that exploitable, because I'm going to show you kind of the game plan of Hulk, right? You jump in, you use all your cooldowns right, and while you're using all of your cooldowns like this, you're charging jump, and then you leave. So where was the ability for somebody to actually counter the Hulk jump there, right? That's why I think Hulk is, you might not believe this from just playing with Hulks in your games necessarily. I think Hulk is very, very strong. It is so hard to actually punish this guy if he's playing properly. He's always in and out. He has so much health. He has so many options. Remember, he's got a projectile ability, which is very good. He has a stun, which he has so much he can do with this, right? He can leave a support stunned so that he can kill the other people, right? He can leave a tank stunned so that his team can walk up and kill the supports. There's a lot that you can do with that ability. And he has self-sustain, so he can keep in and also help his team, right? So there's a lot here with Hulk that offsets his melee design. And of course, he has more self-sustain with his ultimate ability and more cooldown cycling as well. There is just a lot to this character that, you know, makes him not as bad of a melee character, right? It allows his design to work. And I think there is just too much here. I think it is very hard to punish Hulk. And I think it really comes down mostly to the ability to just keep charging jump and keep being able to jump everywhere, right? That is really what is kind of the problem, because, you know, you think of like a similar character like Winston, and his jumps on a short cooldown, sure, but Hulk can jump in, have another jump, and then jump away. Or he can start a fight on a wall and then charge and then jump in like that, and then of course use his cooldown cycle and then jump away. Like, it's very, very easy for Hulk to get value like this, and you know, his cooldowns aren't on that long compared to a lot of characters in this game, so he can do this pretty frequently and help his team get in as well because of his bubble that goes everywhere. So I do think that Hulk's, you know, even though his time to kill is decently high, his punish windows are very, very low, and in fact somewhat non-existent when you really think about it. Consider, you know, he may even have another tank with him that make it much less often that he's going to be able to get punished. So I really do like Hulk. I think there's a lot that you can do with this character. There's a lot of decision making, which I think is really, really good, you know, that keeps that hero shooter what we really want. And he's got a couple of, you know, his exile you have to aim, his clap you have to aim. He's got the skills, you know. I think a good Hulk is really impressive. But I think his game plan is a little too linear in a lot of regards, although his exile is pretty cool. And it's just too effective, right? He's up too often. So I do like Hulk, but I think there is a lot of work here to make it so that Hulk isn't as, you know, what's it called? isn't as up, right? I think if you had like a second or two before you could charge up your leap again, or if you just charged up a leap, maybe your next leap charges up slower. That could be something. But otherwise, you know, Hulk is pretty good, and I do really like his design overall. Now that I've gotten time to work with it. Thor, I think, is an interesting case because he also has everything that a melee character would want to offset his melee. He's got a projectile. He's also got the Thor mode, which is another projectile, which we'll talk about in a second. That's a bit of a whole different thing. But he also has movement with this ability as well, and he's got the displacement with this ability too. So if he needs more time to get his kill, he can try and abduct somebody, put them into the team, stuff like that. That is something that he can do as well. And of course, keeping people in his range. He's got not as much sustain as Hulk. He has this, which is a little bit of sustain, but also he kind of loses a lot of stuff as well when he goes into this mode. So Thor is a lot more going to be about getting in, getting out, being more of a nuisance instead of taking a lot of time in the fight as Hulk does, right? Especially because he can't help his team as much. The thing about Thor is that he has a unique mechanic, and that's with his hammers. While Hulk has a really high uptime, Thor has a somewhat artificially limited uptime because when you use an ability that requires a hammer, all of your abilities go on cooldown, except for this drop, which I don't even know what it's called. That's the thing that refills your hammers. But what's really awkward about Thor is that since he's a resource character, the limitation of resource characters is that you have to manage it, right? You have to manage the resource. But because everything's on a shared cooldown, you really aren't managing your resource, at least not nearly as much as a resource character should. I think a lot of the fun of resource characters comes down to not blowing your load all the time, right? Choosing when you're going to use a lot of your resource and how you're going to get that back, right? Thor, it's kind of artificially changed. And I think that is a bit of an issue because Thor is not actually allowed the luxury of staying in. In fact, he has too many windows of weakness because every time you use an ability, everyone on the battlefield knows that you're worthless for 2 seconds. And so it's fine. Like, you know, if Thor comes up to the high ground to duel me and he doesn't reach me, well then I'm not in danger in any regard for 2 seconds because he can't throw his hammer, or he can't even activate this mode to try and kill me, right? So that is where Thor, I think, it loses a lot for me, where he should be this character that is like really easy to, you know, and he has no shield, he has no way to kind of keep himself in the fight, so he should be really easy to interrupt his cycle and mess up his resource management if he wants to kind of like use all of it at one time. But you really don't have to do that because he can't use everything at one time, and he feels very, very clunky. So I actually think, opposite to Thor, he has too many windows, too many weaknesses that make him very frustrating to play. Now, I'm actually going to disagree with some people, mainly Spilo. If you've seen some of his videos, he doesn't like this mode because it feels very like counterintuitive to what he wants to do, and he can't really use his abilities during it anyways, so it's not as like conducive to his game plan. But I do want to push back on that a little bit because I actually think that's a really interesting idea, right? You can give up all of your movement and all of the playmaking potential that you have with displacement or, you know, the projectile or whatever, and go into this mode and just, you know, do damage, right? You can offset your range and do that for a couple of seconds, and then that's it, right? I think that's actually a very, very interesting prospect. The problem is that since Thor has shared cooldowns on everything, you know, you're not actually giving up much to go into this mode. It's a lot linear. Like, your game plan is around trying to get to this mode, when I think in theory, it should be a different option, right? It should be kind of like a Hail Mary option, or it could be like a really big, again, like a big resource spend option, instead of the thing that you're trying to play around at all times, right? If you were allowed to do more things, like come up here and then throw your hammer right away and just use all of your hammers all at once, then, you know, it wouldn't feel like you always have to just save hammers to get into this mode, when you would have a lot more options. And I think that bringing that decision making into Thor's kit like that would make him a much, much better design. And I will admit, like, I kind of love this character. even though he's got all these warts, and I wish he was, you know, better, and I wish they had thought about it a little more. I understand if you take away his cooldowns, maybe that breaks him. You'd have to tune him a little bit. But there's a lot that I wish that Thor could do that he can't. And I want to love this character. But as of right now, I think his design overall is just good. But there's a lot of work to be done. Now, unlike Thor, who I think has a lot of opportunities to be kind of like out of the fight or have really low uptime, high areas of weakness, Captain America doesn't. So Captain America has a lot of ways to get in. He's got his run and this and his dive that you just saw. Then he also has, you know, regular primary fire, which goes a certain distance if you're able to hit people with his regular primary fire. Then he has just a regular shield throw that bounces around to people. So Captain America has a lot of ways to, you know, keep up with his enemy. And always be in the fight. Like, I think Captain America is the tank that might have the highest uptime because he has self-sustain with his shield, and he has jump. So if you try to run away, he just runs at you, and he jumps at you, and he bashes at you, and he does literally everything under the sun that you can think of. He uses his projectile abilities that he gets from banging you on the head. And what this comes down to is that Captain America's uptime is very high, but his value that he gets, or at least his kill threat, is very low. Unlike somebody like Hulk or somebody who gets a lot of value when his uptime is high because of his high uptime. Captain America, he is getting value, but it doesn't feel very good. You know, you may watch Super and he'll be like, you know, he'll be on the supports for a million years and he's just keeping them out of the fight. And yes, that's a lot of value, but it doesn't really feel very good. And the reason that Captain America has very little damage, I mean, look how much his bash does. That's pitiful, pitiful damage. Is because his uptime is so high and the ability that he's able to keep up with you because of his run and his dash and his dive and all of these things, right? So he can't have high damage. And I think that is just a really big flaw. This character is really fun. He is very fast and mobile, but he's got to have long cooldowns on his abilities because if he didn't, then he would be a complete menace and he'd be doing too much damage again. So my solution, I think, is to take a little bit of power out of his run, and I think actually his run should be on a resource like Black Widow. That would allow you to allow his other abilities to maybe do more damage, and he wouldn't be his uptime wouldn't be as high. He'd have to think about it much more often. But yeah, his abilities could do more damage. They could be on shorter cooldowns maybe. And then you have like higher spikes of value, so you feel like you actually have things that you're doing on Captain America more often, rather than just kind of being a meat shield who is surviving and surviving and surviving and being kind of like the mosquito tank, honestly, is the best way that I can put it. I do really like Captain America. I think I have the most hours in this game on Captain America so far, but there's a lot, again, there's a lot of work to be done with this guy, you know? I think he's almost there, but he just kind of feels a little wet noodle. And I think that's the thing that a lot of the tanks feel like right now, but specifically a lot of these dive tanks, these melee tanks, they're afraid of them being too scary, about being too much damage. And I think that is a good concern, but they need to have peaks and valleys. And I think Captain America is just one big valley that his gameplay, it just, you know, you feel like you're doing or it doesn't, you know, you're doing a lot. You're hitting a lot of buttons, you're running around, you're staying in the fight. It feels like you should be doing more than you are, but you aren't. You know what I mean? That's kind of where Captain America lies. Now, those are the tanks. They are different, you know, kind of situations as well. But in general with the tanks, when do they become well designed? Well, they need to have risk, and they need to have they need to have areas of weakness where, you know, Captain America isn't frustrating because you aren't getting like completely annihilated by Captain America when he's on you, even though his uptime is high. But like with Hulk, you can feel like he's kind of uninteractable a lot of the time, so it just isn't really fun or interesting. And then on the flip side, Thor can be super easily punished for his game plan, even though he has the gameplay loop of like the high damage potential. He's missing other parts of his gameplay loop, right? So overall, I think they've got 3 really good starts for melee character designs, but they really need to take a look into specifically for these tanks, survivability, ability to keep people in the fight, or sorry, chase people down, stay up with them. I think that is something that they really do need to think about. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the DPS characters. I talked about like the what's it called, the peaks and the valleys of the melee character design. I think Black Panther might be the peak. Is Black Panther the best designed melee character ever? I couldn't tell you that because I haven't played every hero shooter ever. But God, this guy is so cool. So, Black Panther, of course, has ways to supplement his range. He's got his spear. He's got his dash, which of course resets if you hit a marked target, which would allow him to keep up that, keep up his, what's it called? His pressure. So let's say this Galactobot is running away from me and I hit them with a dash spear. Then I have my dash back again. They're super low health and I go, okay, maybe I'm not going to hit the mark. I'm just going to go hit them, right? Lots of decision making there. Lots of really good stuff as well. He doesn't have displacement, but he's got the projectile and he's got the movement, right? He's got the wall climb where you can set up really well and kind of avoid damage. So you've got interesting ways to engage, right? You could take the front on approach, which is the fast way to do it, or you can be much more methodical and lose out on a lot of potential damage because you're taking more time to kind of be stealthy assassin. That's part of it. You've also got the other movement ability, which applies the mark, but also could get you out of a situation in a pinch because it has a lot of, movement. Like you can control it a lot. So you can kind of mix people up. You can get around corners. You can keep yourself safe with that. Lots of options, lots of decision making. Very, very good in that department. And of course, he's got his own unique mechanic with the dash reset, somewhat similar to Genji, although you don't have to get the kill for it. What's really interesting to me about this is that you have a lot of decisions to make. It's an AoE. Both of them can be AoEs, but let's say I see both of them. If I want to do just really big cleave damage, I could go through both of them, sure. But if I'm trying to keep my uptime as much as possible, I can go through one and then go through the next one, and then that actually saves me from having to reuse my spear, right? I'll show you exactly what I mean, right? I spear them both, I dash through them. Now I have to use another spear. But what if I spear one, hit one, now I use another spear, I reset the mark on both of them, I go again. There's a lot that you can do, and this gets really interesting when you have targets that aren't marked, right? So I hit one, let's say both of these are marked for the sake of the argument. I hit one, now I actually get double dash value, although I only use one mark, and then I can leave by hitting the other marked target, right? There's so much cool stuff that you can do with this character. But since I would say overall his time to kill is generally lower than a lot of characters in this game, it can be really high if you really know what you're doing, or if he's at lower health when he has damage amplifying because he's at low health. But since he takes a little bit of time to set up, he's very punishable, right? He is very punishable. Yes, he's very fast. Yes, he's moving kind of sporadically, but you could very much hit him very low and he's gonna have to leave, or you hit a very good stun on him, he has nowhere to go, right? If you mess up his, if you dash out of the way of his, mark, and I miss the dash, okay, I guess I hit the dash. If I miss the dash because you jut out of the way, you use a movement ability or an invulnerability, then his game plan gets cooked and he's gonna have to leave, use his other ability as well. There's so much you can do with this character, and I never find him to be super unfair. Maybe his damage is a little high, just a little high, but otherwise, this is one of the coolest characters I've ever played in any shooter or any kind of multiplayer game. I'm a very, very big fan of Black Panther, and I didn't even talk about it. His regular melee, right? You've got other things where you can dash down and just hit him with your regular melee and stuff like that. Use your other, use your other dash to get out and everything like that. If you have really good mechanics, I hit that guy and then I try and dash and I didn't quite get it, but I could dash right at the range where I would be right in melee range and I can do the absolute most damage possible. There's so much, again, so much you can do in this character. There's so much to be optimized. So fun, so cool. I really, really, really like Black Panther. And he is going through everything. He, as well as how well designed he is, he's limited, right? If you miss dashes, which is very easy to counterplay, or decently easy to counterplay rather, then your game plan kind of gets cooked. You're gonna have to wait to come back. He doesn't break the rules that much, He's got his own unique mechanics, but nothing I think is unfair or BS. And he's super easy to punish. There's so many ways you can punish him as well. So even though he has so many ways to take engages and to play fights, he also has so many ways that those could go wrong. So fun, where you're back and forth with Black Panther, the way that you have to fight as him, against him. Just like, absolutely bravo. I love Black Panther. No notes, basically. Okay, moving on. Magik. If you know me, you know I hate Magik. That's because of her strength. I think she's just kind of bad, and I had to get the achievement on her, and it was actually killing me. But overall, what is Magik's shtick, right? So she actually has the longest range of the melee characters I think I'll be talking about today regularly. Obviously, she has a sword, but with that range comes a longer swing time, right? So a lot of the other characters have pretty, like, you know, fast swings when they're in melee range. She does not, right? So that's kind of like one of her weaknesses. So her effective range is a little longer, but at the same time, you know, her damage is a little lower. And of course, she has ways to supplement it. She's got the projectile, she can charge, she can dash in with that ability, and of course she has the portals, which allow her to stay in fights longer because of you know, the demon thing that she can throw and the damage reduction, right? You can use that to kind of skillfully block certain abilities from hitting you. Which is, you know, it's pretty interesting. And she has her own sustain, because when you do damage, you get shields. So being skillful, hitting your abilities, especially, you know, hitting a projectile before you go in is pretty critical, because then you have some extra bulk when you're going to be taking damage. I think that's also really, really important for Magik. The thing about Magik is that she takes a very, very long time to kill things, typically. She does have a lot of good combos that you can use, but if anything disrupts them, she also has a regular melee, which is really funny, but if anything disrupts them, then you're gonna be really sorely lacking. And the problem that I think that Magik really has is that if her combos don't work, she doesn't have that same pressure like everybody else. Her damage is generally pretty low. Again, her time to kill, again, is also very low. So if you mess her up one way, you kind of mess her up all ways over. And it's hard to get out, right? Because her combos are also pretty reliant on, you know, her dash, and her dash is the ability that would let her get out of, you know, a situation, right? I'm getting pressured here, I dash out, but now I'm not doing damage, right? So Magik, there's a lot, that I think is kind of like her current balance that might be a bit of the problem. Like, I see a lot of good in her design, but I think that it's kind of clunky. And of course, this portal ability I really don't like. I think it's extremely clunky. It feels really weird. The demon thing that she can throw is also kind of just strange, and it's kind of like just a get off me tool, I guess, but so is the portal anyways. So yes, Magik can be super punished, and using her ult, you know, doesn't even give her anything extra, except when she hits more people, she gets more shields, I guess. So she's very punishable. I think that's one thing, like, Magik is very punishable. Like, she's not BS, but I just don't think her general game plan kind of functions as well as possible. So yeah, she's like not infuriating to fight against like a lot of melee characters can be, but I also don't think she is quite so fun to play as, and that is a bit of an issue. There's just a lot going on here that I want to say, like, this is like, you know, an okay design overall, but I do think Magik does need a little bit more. I think maybe if she had 2 charges on her dash instead of her portal ability, maybe that would be more interesting. But I don't want to homogenize her to the other characters. So yeah, I don't know. I think Magik on paper is a well-designed character, but I think in practice, it doesn't quite come together as well. Like, she's not annoying, but she isn't very fun either. Okay. Let's talk about Spider-Man. If you have watched my stream, or you know me, you know that I kind of despise this character. And it's not because of his kit. It's because of the video game that he is in, right? Because look at this. I mean, you get to swing around in Spider-Man. This is very fun. He has so many movement abilities. Like, obviously, you can use his web swings, like regular web swings, or you can just swing right to them. You can pull people to you, you know, which is really fun. That's the Spider-Man thing. He's got the uppercut, which is very satisfying to hit. It feels very, very good. All of that. And of course, he's a big movement character. There's a lot of decisions you have to make. How do you use your webs effectively? How do you use your this ability effectively, you know? All of that, right? Combo character, super high movement potential. Should be in the Black Panther tier. Nope. Here's the reason. Again, look at this. Do you see how insanely fast this character moves and runs and does so many things? He's in and out, and he has 3 charges of his web swing, and he has 2 charges of his punch, and he has 5 of his webs that come back very, very fast relative to their strength and how essential they are to his kit. Do you see the problem here? Yes, he has everything that makes him work, and yes, he has a lot of stuff on paper that should make him a really good design. But this is, Marvel Rivals is not playing at the speed that Spider-Man plays. In fact, a lot of times it feels like the server tick rate can't even keep up with how fast he's moving. That's how somewhat BS his character feels a lot of the time. Where, yes, he in theory has ample windows of punishment, but all of a sudden he's just, there he goes again, bye-bye. He's just flown away completely to not be found. He has no limits on how he can set up because he's got wall run and wall climb, and he can just sit there and wait, and he doesn't even have to use his movement abilities to set up. He can just already be there. I don't like this character. I find him to be just so infuriating, so hard to fight. And then on top of that, this character who has already very limited ways to kind of stop and shut him down if you know you're doing, his ultimate, you can't stun him out of it. And he gets a bunch of shield. So he just kind of gets free ults, you know. Obviously you can get away from it if you're fast enough. It's not like completely free. I'm being a little hyperbolic when I say that, but that kind of goes into something that I'll talk about in my Rivals like month later video, which should be coming out pretty soon. That it's an ult that is just kind of non-interactable, and that just is not very fun to me. I don't think it's a very fun design. It feels like I couldn't outplay it, and a lot of times with Spider-Man, it just feels like you cannot outplay this character. Yes, there is a lot of high skill. Yes, that is what we are looking for. That is very, very good, but he shouldn't be in this game. You know what I mean? It feels like they pluck him out of Marvel Spider-Man, the video game. And in that game, it's an open world game where you don't have to fight other real people. In this game, that's not the case. So yes, the feeling of Spider-Man is very cool, but he should not exist in this video game. That is my opinion. They need to slow him down. Unironically, I think they need to slow him down. I do hate to say that, obviously, because, you know, the speed is like what makes Spider-Man feel good, but I just don't like the idea that he just kind of gets to exist in his own little world. It doesn't feel very fun to fight against it. It just feels a little BS. And of course, Spider-Man players, you know, they get to, again, live in their own world. They're playing a different video game than all of us, and I'm sure that's fun. I'm sure it's fine, but I have some problems with that, unfortunately. I want to like Spider-Man, I just don't. That's kind of my opinion there. Okay, speaking of wanting to like characters, Wolverine is a character that I gravitate towards just because, you know, he's very silly. Obviously, he's got this move. It's very, very fun to hit that move, right? The thing about Wolverine is that, unlike a lot of the other melee characters, his ways to offset his, his range are a lot different. He has a very short dash ability, which, yes, it's on a low cooldown, but it doesn't really get him in as much as you would want. And he's got this, he's got this mechanic where he has to stay as close to people as possible, the Berserker, to keep that rage up so he's doing more damage, right? So he wants to be trying to chase people down, but he actually kind of struggles to chase people down, which can be very interesting, trying to keep your rage up. And then he also has his, the damage reduction, which allows him to stay in longer or to kind of close the distance. The problem with Wolverine, what really becomes, is that, one, he has low opportunities to actually punish him because a lot of his game plan becomes this. He's going to set up somewhere, he's going to dash into you, abduct you, go back to his team. Somewhere in that time, he used his damage reduction so you can't interact with him, and he's going to shred somebody. And since Wolverine does, percentage-based health or damage, his game plan becomes a lot more linear, because now he becomes the tank shredder, right? So what he does is that, screw the rage management, screw all of that. This is what Wolverine's game plan is. This is a tank, dash the tank, grab the tank, put the tank back. By the time I've done with the tank, I have full, full berserk. And the tank has almost no health because I'm doing a percentage of their health, right? It is just actually insane. He is a complete tank shredder, and he just abducts people, and there's very little counterplay. other than like Magneto Bubble or Hulk Bubble or something like that. And as much as I want to like some of the stuff of this character, like the, trying to keep your rage up and stuff like that, in practice, it's just very linear. Like, he is just a very linear character. Like, that is kind of the long and short of it. Again, like, he's got a dash that's on a low cooldown. It's not very powerful, so there's a lot you could be doing with the dash. But again, like, and since you, again, another thing, since you get a damage or an attack increase once you hit the, what's it called? The jump, then, or even just use the jump, then getting rage isn't as hard because you grab somebody and then you just build full rage off of them. Like, it kind of like eliminates the fun part of the resource management. Like, I'm really frustrated with this character because at first we all thought he was pretty bad, but once people realized he did percentage-based health or percentage-based damage, and they realized just how strong abducting, especially a tank, into the team is, now this character is just really annoying to deal with. Because again, once he goes in, I hit this button, I damage reduce, I go in, I abduct somebody, I miss, but and then that's it, right? No risk involved to me. My team is just gonna guarantee a kill, and then I'm gonna go use, since I did that, I'm gonna go use my ult because I have full Berserker rage, and that's it. So as much as I want to like Wolverine, I want to see a lot here, I think he is just a complete mismatch of design. He's so linear. In terms of trying to improve him, I think that if he got, I don't know if he needs like, I actually think maybe his attack speed should scale with his Berserk, with his rage, and his rage should always be constantly ticking down as well. So you're much more like push and pull with your rage. I think that would make it a lot more interesting. And I don't know, I think there's a lot that you have to like think about. I haven't really thought about how it would change Wolverine, but try and keep the game plan away a little bit more from just abducting somebody and that's all you do. That should be like subsidiary. I don't know. There's a lot with Wolverine. Okay. Remember how I talked about how this game has the peaks and it also has the valleys. This character is maybe the worst design character I've seen in a while in a new game. Iron Fist is BS incarnate, and is he very good? No. But is he frustrating? Does he kind of have like no, I don't know how to say this. Does he kind of ignore all the skills and everything that we like out of hero shooters? Kind of. So let's talk about it. Obviously, he can supplement his range. He has movement. He's a movement ability. He's got 4 jumps. He's got wall running, right? He can get in. There's no problem with him getting in. The other thing he has, of course, is the lock-on. I'm sure you've seen all the clips. I'm sure you've played Iron Fist. He's got the lock-on. So even if people try to escape him, he can keep up, right? He doesn't have to use his movement abilities. He doesn't have to use anything like that, even though he has a bunch of them. He literally just has to look at you and he'll hone onto you, right? I don't have to tell you how kind of stupid that is. Because, part of the reason why we like melee characters is that part of the, the fun of them, and especially ones that have a lot of movement like this, is that you have to keep up and you have to use your movement to get in, to get out, and all of that. But with Iron Fist, yes, you could use your movement to keep up with a character, right? Like I see this guy, he's trying to run away from me. I'm gonna use my wall run. That's a little faster than normal. And then I'm gonna try and jump and try and cut him off, or I can just look at him and hone. So there's no mechanical skill there, and you kind of just have to, like, you kind of ignore your decision making and, your skill of, like, trying to navigate the map, because again, the game does it for you. That allows Iron Fist to have super high uptime and very, very hard, limited windows to actually counter him. And then, on top of that, of course, he has his deflect, which not only do you, when you do damage, with one, you do higher attack speed after the deflect and damage reduction, so it's a very loaded ability, and it kind of like makes your game plan pretty linear because that's just what you're going for kills as well. But also, when you're doing damage afterwards, you get your block cooldown back faster, So it just allows you to stay in the fight longer. And again, Iron Fist has no problem staying in the fight because he hones on people and he will always be doing damage, right? Like I already have my block back, stuff like that. And how do you stop him from doing that? Well, you can't, because he's CC immune. He's like everything immune during his block. And of course the damage reduction makes it hard to keep him away from you after the block, right? And he gets over health when he blocks things, and when he gets kills, he gets more health. He's just a sustain demon. But again, you know, Magik has a decent amount of sustain. Other characters have decent amount of sustain, but Iron Fist does have decent kill threat. And he also it just happens naturally. Like it just happens. Like there's not a lot of skill to it, in my opinion, with Iron Fist. Like it feels like this character should be forced to use all of this stuff in his kit much more often. I mean, he's got a couple of cool things, like his one like very fast movement tool like that does more damage when characters at lower health. That's a cool decision. Do I want to engage with the kick to close the distance faster, or do I want to save that? Maybe I use this ability to get in and kick them on the way out and stuff like that. Or maybe I need to use the kick to disengage. Or maybe I'll just do this. Do you see what I'm talking about? Do you see the, and he also has this crazy air stall, which I think is just ridiculous for setting up as well, because he has plenty of other tools that he can use to set up, like his double jumps and his wall ride. He can also just stall in the air. I'm sure you've seen him like chase down Iron Mans because of just how this character functions, right? He breaks the rules. He breaks the rules of this game. It's just, yes, there's a lot to this character, but I think that is to the detriment of him. Like, it's not fun. There's not a lot of mechanical skill involved because of the honing, because, you know, there's so many things that give you sustain and overhealth. There isn't a lot of decision making with your abilities, because again, right, when there's better options, like there's one good option to get in, it's just wall ride and then hone on them, then you never have to worry about using your kick in the right way, because using the kick in the right way will always naturally happen, right? Because everything does so many things, then it's very easy to find the most effective way to do it, like cycle everything, and then his game plan becomes very linear and very boring and very uninteractive, in my opinion. This, you know, there's a lot of characters in Marvel Rivals that I don't really like a lot, but Iron Fist might be like the most just I'll say a batshit crazy design I think I've seen. I mean, like, the fact, like, this character has so much movement. Isn't the fun of this character supposed to be like trying to hunt people down and trying to get into range where you can hit them? Is that really not what they wanted? They're just like, oh, this character that just does everything for you. They call this character a 4-star difficulty character. This is a baby mode character, I'm not going to lie. Like, this character just does everything for you, no thought, head empty. I really don't like Iron Fist. Like, I think it's clear at this point. Do not like this character at all. Oh, I totally forgot about this thing. This is another thing where it's like, you know, it's supposed to be like a sustained thing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go get around a corner and go meditate and get my health back. The thing is that, like, since you get so much health for doing other things over health, you might as well just start the fight by getting over health, you know, just have extra over health, go in there. Like, in theory, there should be a lot of decisions you have to make this character, but everything just does too much all at the same time. And there's just so, like, little de-emphasized skill on this character. I really, really don't want this, like, this character. If you take off the honing and just make him run faster on the wall, or make his jumps faster, you know, just anything like that, he becomes 17 times more interesting. Obviously, there's a lot more you have to change with the block and everything. But, like, again, I also think maybe instead of the block cooldown being reduced when you hit people, maybe his kick cooldown should be reduced or something else. Another cooldown being reduced, another way to buff himself. But that is Iron Fist, that is the DPS roster. So I think it's kind of clear that Marvel Rivals is a little all over the place when it comes to character design in the melee space. The last video of these I did, I compared Overwatch heroes, and I actually went to see, like, what can Overwatch learn from these melee designs. I don't really think I have to do that here, because the Overwatch characters are either, you know, Reinhardt, who I think is like pretty good, Brig, who doesn't function like a regular melee hero, and Doom, who again is not really a regular melee hero. Not really in the same boat as these characters. And a lot of other characters that are like pseudo melee characters, like Genji and whatever, they're more like shotgun characters with mobility. All the semantics, whatever. So I I think I'm going to leave it here. Marvel Rivals has a lot of good character designs and a lot of stinker character designs. That's just how it goes. A lot of characters overloaded, but a couple characters like, again, my sweet summer child, Black Panther, my beloved, you know, he's great. And there's a couple, like, I like Thor, I like Cap, I like Hulk, you know, Magik's okay. Spider-Man should be fun. And then Iron Fist is a complete disaster. But yeah, that's what I think. Conclusion of the melee character, they can work. Obviously, it has been proved to work, but I do think it is very hard to get them quite right. Like, it's easier to balance somebody who has a gun and like pretty simple abilities, and it's much harder to find the complexity and the skill required without the BS and without just feeling like a wet noodle kind of character, right? I feel like there's a lot of factors that go into it. So overall, character design is hard. I'm not an expert on it either, but, you know, shout out to the Marvel Rivals team for trying new things. Sometimes they really stick the landing, and other times they fall flat on their face into a pit of molten lava and also bring the entire town down with them. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Please like and subscribe while you're at it if you liked it, and let me know down below, who do you like playing as in Marvel Rivals? What are your thoughts on these melee characters as well? This will be a series. Probably up next will be shield characters, or no, characters who less aim-intensive characters. We'll have to see when that will come out, but I'll have my full thoughts on Marvel Rivals probably coming out next week. My full, like, first 100 hours impression of the game as well. So be on the lookout for that on this channel. And if you want to see me play Marvel Rivals, twitch.tv/LaneHemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays is when I stream. I am back from vacation. I am here to play the video game. I will be live on those days, so please check that out as well. And join my Discord down below if you want to join in on all things Overwatch, Marvel Rivals, just general discussion. There's a little community down there as well. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and please have a good day.